And now we're gonna envision the future. And for this session, I'm delighted to welcome three speakers. We'll start with Anya Waite. Anya is the CEO and Scientific Director of the Ocean Frontier Institute in Canada. And she's the Executive Officer and Scientific Director of the Ocean Frontier Institute led by Dalhousie University. She was a postdoctoral scholar at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and a Winthrop professor in Australia before becoming section head of biological oceanography at the Alfred Wegener Institute, an institute actually with whom we also have collaborations here at CIIMAR. Dr. Waite has won numerous teaching excellence awards and was recently awarded Japan's Yoshida Award for oceanographic upwelling research. Previously, Dr. Waite served as a co-chair of the Global Ocean Observing System, Canada's representative at the World Meteorological Organization's Greenhouse Gas Study Group, and the Associate Vice President Research Ocean at Dalhousie. Welcome very much, Anya. Looking forward. Thank you.
I spent yesterday in Porto and fell in love with this lovely small city. What a great place to be. So thank you very much to CIIMAR for inviting me today, and congratulations, CIIMAR, on your 25th anniversary. The Ocean Frontier Institute is much younger. We're only 10 years old, but we have some of the same, we're about the same size, actually, and we have some of the same aspirations to move beyond pure research, to making research useful, to make it applicable, to have industry and government interact with research in a more sort of direct way. So I think we have a lot in common. What I'm going to do today is go through what our three pillars are, which was what I'm calling the three grand challenges. They're of course not the grand challenges, but our grand challenges. And what I'm looking for is places where we can, as a global community, come together to tackle really big questions, because no single institute has the resources or the people or the scope to do all of this work. And we must work together. So institutions like CIIMAR and like Ocean Frontier Institute, like the National Oceanography Center, like the Marine Institute in Galway, these are the institutes where we can come together globally and do big things if we think in the right way. So let's look at what that could look like. Again, congratulations, CIIMAR. So at the Ocean Frontier Institute, we have three focus areas: achieving net zero, that's net zero carbon, so that's the climate, protecting biodiversity, and sustaining bioresources. And these are all areas where we bring together researchers, industry, and government to solve complex ocean problems. And we're looking for collaboration. Especially, we'd like to see some of the youth in the room, and there's so many of you, and wow, those speakers before lunch, didn't they just knock our socks off? I mean, that was a fantastic lineup. And so inspiring. We invite you to Canada. Come visit us, come talk to us, come explore your future, not just here in beautiful Portugal, but also there's many other places where you could learn, and we hope that some of you will land eventually with us. All right, so where do we start with the net zero carbon conversation? We start with the fact that the ocean controls our climate. And this was something that was about 5 or 6 years ago, when I was first the chair of the Global Ocean Observing System, I realized that the intergovernmental organizations did not have this fact front and center. The WMO didn't even discuss the ocean. The UNFCCC had to be forced to use the term ocean in 2015 by a special delegation from the Alfred Wegener Institute that said, you can't talk about climate without talking about the ocean. Anyway, the main thing is, the ocean controls our climate. It absorbs 90% of the heat that humans produce, and it stores 80% of the carbon. So we can't understand the carbon and climate cycle without understanding the ocean. 30% of human-induced carbon emissions have been absorbed by the ocean. So again, that trajectory, that human-driven trajectory of global warming cannot be understood without the ocean. So let's focus in on that first area, achieving net zero. The high-level objective is to understand the ocean in the climate system, but we also want to deliver climate solutions. And that means under the UNFCCC and under the Paris Agreement, marine carbon dioxide removals are part of the international discussion and should be part of the international discussion. How we act that is very, very important and needs all of you in the room, the researchers, to engage. Otherwise, we're going to get this wrong. There are many other drivers that do not have research front and center. Let's make sure that we step into this space to deliver good information and clear-headed advice to our policymakers. The challenges, of course, are primarily monitoring. Understanding the trajectory of ocean carbon absorption is not easy. And the critical thing that's missing right now, this is my horizon, is the baseline discussion has not been executed correctly in the ocean space, and I'm going to talk about that very briefly. So this brings us to a balancing act. How to avoid the impacts of climate change by understanding the ocean's trajectory and also by perturbing it actively, by supporting innovation in doing that. But how do you do that in a sustainable way, in a way that preserves the biodiversity of the ocean and the functions that we all depend on? And just this map here on the left, this shows you the absorption of carbon by the ocean. And it tells you that our ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, has done most of the work. 30% of carbon absorptions in the ocean have happened in the North Atlantic Ocean. That's because of the North Atlantic overturning circulation, of course, which absorbs carbon in the surface, then it cools and sinks down to the sea floor of the North Atlantic, and then it crawls south into the Southern Ocean basin. So we have a chance here in the North Atlantic, Portugal and Canada, to understand this circulation and to put a finger on the pulse of global warming as carbon moves through the system. So what are our challenges in ocean observation? The challenge is that most carbon observation is actually done on land and in the atmosphere, and a very tiny amount happens in the ocean. That's despite the fact that most of the carbon sits in the ocean. So it's a complete disconnect between where we observe ocean carbon and where it's actually sitting. The ocean stores 80% of the Earth's total carbon, and something we often don't talk about is that most, 90% of all the carbon stored in the ocean is deep ocean carbon. So not those beautiful kelp forests, not the corals, not the seagrasses that have been so high in the public profile and that we really depend on for biodiversity and coastal resilience and all the most important functions that they have. That's not where most of the carbon is. And we have to take that into account, otherwise we're sending a false narrative to our policymakers. All right, so why do we need ocean carbon observations? We need them first to improve our climate forecasts, because we know that those are, I'll show you a plot later that shows that the climate forecasts and of ocean carbon absorption are now diverging from the actual measurements. So we're starting to see this, the ocean is absorbing actually more than we're predicting, and it means that we don't have well-informed climate strategies, and we need to reduce that uncertainty because we're starting to see extreme events more and more, and if we can't predict those, we don't know how to manage. And one of the things I was talking to some economists who had some new actuarial data, and I didn't really know much about this, but insurance companies create predictions of climate change all the time. Now, they don't do it from this data. They do it from probabilistic data. And they told me that we were on course for a 4-degree warming. So, but they're just doing this, back of the envelope calculation, a few numbers in a computer, boom, there's nothing functioning about it. But it means that if we don't understand those extreme events, if we don't understand how the ocean is functioning, we can't tell them whether they're right or wrong. And that seems important. Okay, now, enabling responsible carbon removals. We must improve the credibility of some of this work. There are carbon repositories that hold carbon credits, and they're waiting to be bought internationally. You can buy carbon credits now to offset your emissions. The problem is most of the carbon credits in those repositories are not good quality credits. They're things like, I'm going to make a car which has a battery, and therefore I'm going to avoid all that lifetime of carbon emission. And they sell that avoidance of carbon emission as a carbon credit. Contrast that to, I'm going to take up atmospheric carbon and store it in the ocean for more than 100 years. That's blue chip carbon credit. So we have this huge opportunity in the ocean, but only if it's done properly and carefully. So we want to realize climate impact, but we need to do that credibly, carefully, and sustainably. And that's the challenge. There's a lot of pushing around here. So some of this work is being done. These are pictures today are all from my backyard. This is Bedford Basin, just outside of, just in Halifax, and they were doing some of the first ever scaled release of alkaline material into the ocean to pull in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. That red is just a red dye for tracing. And they've just put those credits up on the market. How do you think they got their baseline against which to measure the carbon uptake? Was it a carefully measured baseline done while they were doing this and therefore a perfect, crisp comparator? No, it wasn't, of course. What it was a model estimate of what the background carbon uptake was. And let's be clear, in this room, for those of us who are modelers and oceanographers and scientists, we know that those models are pretty good. They can get a reasonable estimate. We can even estimate how bad they are. But they're not a real estimate. They're not real. They're a model, right? So how have baselines worked in the past? Well, if you look at on the land situation, they've used 3 different types of baselines. First of all, just the historic average of carbon uptake on that square of the Earth. Then they've used excellent models. That's where the ocean currently is operating. And the third is a difficult one, but it actually is turning out to be the best one. And that's what we call perfect matches. They're not perfect. They're pieces of land that absorb carbon almost exactly the same way as the place where you're perturbing. And you measure that perfectly, and then you measure it against, you weigh it against the other. Now, obviously, in a clear-cut on land, you can see in a clear-cut forest, you could imagine having a perfect match. Here's a square, it's been clear-cut. Here's another square that's been clear-cut, and I'm going to seed trees, and then I'm going to measure the difference between those 2 perfect matches. It turns out, just historically, between 2022 and 2024, the land-based carbon market collapsed. And it did so because they used 1 and 2. Because the public and the purchasers did not like model minus model. They thought that was not a good way to do it, and therefore they said, we're not going to pay for those carbon credits, which is funny considering that those battery carbon credits are still sitting around in the carbon repositories. But anyway, I'd rather buy a tree than what a battery does. However, now they're moving, in order to save the land carbon market, which is now 90%, still more than 90% of the carbon market is based on land, they're going to these design-based perfect matches. And that's how they're going to save the land-based industry. What's scary now is that in the ocean, we're still stuck model minus model, which means we're headed down the same car crash route that the land went in 2022. We have to save ourselves, and that means what is a design-based perfect match in an ocean scenario, and that means designing a perfect oceanographic estimate of carbon uptake before and after. That's work for you in this room, that's work for us. Let's do that work, and let's not mess about with the same system that made the land-based carbon credit system crash in 2022. Because that's my horizon for pillar number 1. Okay, and happy to take critiques, questions, tomatoes, anything you like. Oh, what have I done? Oh, okay, no, this is where I'm taking this in our institute, is, Alex mentioned this, autonomous surface vehicles. This is a 3.6 meters, so it's a bit bigger than it looks, it's 12 feet. It has all sorts of beautiful features, which I can talk about, but the main thing is that it can move through surf, it can move through very heavy conditions, it's unscrewed, here's our little logo, and it can move rapidly and it can take measurements. So it has all sorts of nice things on it, and also is scalable. It's relatively cheap. This is the sort of thing where if you could really get the cost down, you could get fleets of them, and you could measure right away before you put the carbon in, and then measure afterwards and see what you've done. There's all sorts of capacity here. And on the right-hand side, Dartmouth Ocean Technologies is a Halifax company, a spin-off from Dalhousie, where they've meant, and this is a depth zigzag on the x-axis there in time, and then you can see alkalinity. They're doing a wet alkalinity measurement that they're very happy with. I don't know that we're going to go wet alkalinity route. I just show this because I think it's important that we try everything, and good companies do good things. So I think we might go with a hard sensor that I've just recently seen. The point here is that cutting-edge technologies, especially if they can make things cheaper, they can enable a lot of these frontier horizon solving those problems. And so we need to make ourselves familiar with them and buy them and use them and really get things moving ahead. All right. Biodiversity, and this is something that Alex knows a lot more about than I do, but this is some work, and again, another picture from our backyard, newly discovered sponge gardens and cold water corals off Nova Scotia. The objective here has to be improving understanding of ocean life and, of course, conservation in the face of the many threats, including pollution, overfishing that Alex discussed so well, habitat destruction, and, of course, climate change. And that's a balancing act against safeguarding over ocean biodiversity while somehow allowing to continue the important industries like tourism, fishing, and now for us in Nova Scotia, it's offshore wind, which is a big, big thing for us. So I'm going to try. Let's go back to the Challenger. I love that Alex brought this. So this is the track of the Challenger. If you notice the Challenger also, it stopped in Portugal. It actually was in Lisbon, but also stopped in Halifax. And in fact, it left a bunch of samples. We still have some stored samples from the Challenger expedition in Halifax. So this was, the great thing about this expedition is that they looked at everything, at every scale. The downside for us is that you think you've discovered a new organism. It's like, no, those 19th century naturalists, they've already diagrammed it and it's in a paper from, 1897 or something. So look at these images. These were done by hand by Heckel and others. These are radiolaria from the open ocean, the deep sea, where some of the biodiversity, as Alex said, is least known. None of these images have been surpassed in quality and perfection. What we are doing now is getting more of them per unit time. So the underwater vision profiler allows you to get thousands of images instantly. This little scale bar here is 2 millimeters for each of those images. And this is my first collage from our Arctic, the first ever Arctic UVP6 survey. And what that allows you to do is to quantify plankton and also particles for the biological pump. So that's an exciting thing. eDNA, obviously very, very important. And again, you have these nice flow-through sensors. Most of them don't do sequencing in situ, though, and I think that's going to be a big leap when we see in situ sequencing. It's going to make a huge difference. So these are some of my favorite data. This is the Ocean Tracking Network. This is a basking shark. And what you can see is, so these are tagged, these are cool tags that you put on the animal and then you track them. And time is on the x-axis there. There's 1, 2, 3 days, 3, 4 days. And that's depth on the x-axis time, y-axis is depth. And the complexity of the diving behavior of this shark really hadn't been understood before. And so you can start then to look at what are they looking at? Are they feeding? Are they breathing? Are they migrating? Why are they doing this? Then there's a different type of shark. I have it written here. Look. This is why I don't use notes. Okay, I'm not even going to look at it because I can't even move the thing. Okay. Oh, someone's doing it for me. That's because you have such amazing staff here. So this shark goes down to 500 meters, but in a much less continuous trajectory. Again, why? And exactly why those depths. So you can link it up with the oceanography from your autonomous vehicle and start to understand how they operate. This is an eel, and this is one of the interesting things for me. It goes down to almost 800 meters, but it's a very clear diel cycle. So that's probably a feeding cycle and a light-triggered feeding cycle. But this is my favorite. This is a devil ray, and look what the devil ray does. Who knows what they're doing? They go down to 2,000 meters, but they do it in these incremental steps. So is that a physiological regulation to pressure? Is it a feeding? Is it some kind of predator avoidance? I don't think we know, but this gets us to the cutting edge, a horizon for me. How do we understand these incredible deep sea animals? And this is one of the ways. So exciting for me. We need all of these technologies because in Nova Scotia, they've already licensed big areas of the offshore area for offshore wind, and they haven't asked us about it. The provincial governments now in Canada are a little bit right-wing. They don't care so much about what we say. So we need to step up and say it. So this is my message to you. Do not, your government may look the other way. You may have some minister that thinks research doesn't matter. That's when you talk more. That's when you step up and say more clearly, this matters. This is important for me, for my livelihood, for our future. We are hoping to help Massachusetts in the United States meet their climate goals, but we're not going to do the proper environmental impact assessment to make sure we're not going to kill the Canadian environment while we're doing it. That's insane, and we need to get up and say that. As I said that, I realized, wow, I could be considered a really shrill, really activist, and maybe they wouldn't let me speak anyway. Okay, sustaining bioresources. This is one of the most important areas for Canada. Canada has managed its resources very poorly in some areas. Some have been okay, but look at the cod collapse. This is the Atlantic cod, beautiful picture of our Atlantic cod. And of course, in the 1990s, the entire fishery collapsed along with the cultural values and communities of much of northern and eastern Canada. So how to get that simple thing, sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, when you have pollution, overfishing, habitat destruction, and climate change. So we want to provide ocean-dry food to the world, and those amazing talks before lunch today really showed some of the new technologies available. We also want to ensure sustainable resource management and protect coastal livelihoods. So how do we do all those things together? That's when the research community needs to step up. So this is when math is our friend. This is a picture of a halibut, so one of the most wonderfully loved fish in Atlantic Canada. Close-kin mark recapture is a wonderful, super, look at this, look how simple this equation is. You've got a parent-offspring pair, a pop. So you go and you sample genetically, you sample a population, you find a mother and, or father and offspring pair. Once you've done that, you simply divide it by how many you think you should have, and it gives you an estimate of the population size. So you can use genetics and small sampling to get 5 estimates of a fishery a stock per year, rather than one every 5 years, which is what we currently do. We go out and we trawl and we tag, and then we wait till those fish come back. You can do this pretty much instantly, and we're testing this now on the halibut, which is the big one of the big fish that we all care about. The other place, and I haven't, because I know so little about it, it sounds like I know something about close-kin mark recapture, and I honestly don't. I'm just an enthusiast because I can see the power of it. The same thing, what's happening is there's new sets of statistics of sparse data. And that new mathematics and statistics coming together is allowing people to use the data that do exist to generate better estimates than before. And of course, if you do this and you do close-kin mark recapture, you use those genetic estimates in the best possible way so that you can compare them against each other and see which is more likely to be right and which is more likely to be wrong. So to me, we're trying to build an institute or a part of an institute just around this set of fisheries concept, to get people together to train up the next generation of practitioners in close-kin mark recapture and the statistics of sparse data. And if we could get 50 PhD students, within 10 years, we would be able to revolutionize how Canada does business in the fish-rich ocean. That's the horizon that I'd like to look forward to. Do I have anything else? Oh, the other sets of technologies that are cool. This is about let's see, about a 50 by 50 image, and it shows you a side-scan sonar image of the sea floor. But you can use another technology. You can use synthetic aperture sonar, and suddenly you can actually see the type of knot that's been used to tie that rope. So again, using the next generation of technologies is critical to bring us the right information. And this could, revolutionize a lot of the benthic sampling as well. Okay, the final example I'm going to show you is global ship tracks. Now I love this image. This is an AIS image. So this is from the sensors that commercial vessels are required to have on their ships. And they show you, first of all, in those bright white, those are the arteries of global trade. That is, you could see some of these big ships full of containers moving out into the Atlantic. There they are, right? Where are they going? Well, you can sort of see they're going down to South America, they're going across to the Caribbean, and they're going north to England. There are also some of them going back into the Mediterranean, right? So the other thing you can see is you can see some very interesting collections of vessels down in the Southern Ocean. And there's been discussion about whether those are orange roughy, whether they're Patagonian toothfish, whether they are krill fisheries. But there's all sorts of interesting data which you could pick apart there. Tahiti seems to do a good job defending its economic zone. Why doesn't any other country do that? So anyway, this to me is fascinating because it shows you, and look at the trickle of ships going through the Northwest Passage north of Canada. So I could just spend days looking at these beautiful data, but guess how much they cost? To buy an image like this with all the AIS data costs about 10,000 to 20,000 euros. Now, that's not sustainable. No developing nation in Africa that needs to monitor itself can afford that kind of those kind of data. But again, technology comes to our aid. So bear with me a minute. There's something to be unpicked here. So this is a nightlight image from Skylight. This is the Gulf of Thailand. And you can't see it that well from where you are, but so this is Thailand up here. This is the coast of Thailand here. This is the Gulf of Thailand. You can see a bunch of ships out here in the Gulf of Thailand. And if you go over to this image from the International Space Station, it's the same image, but kind of tilted because you're seeing the Earth. So here's the Gulf of Thailand here. And the green is all the night vessels that are out sampling with light. Now, what's interesting there is that they're not supposed to be. And in fact, a recent Nature paper, it wasn't that recent, 2021, I think, showed that there was about 100 times more illegal fishing than was thought. Because satellites can now see light so sensitively that they can see an individual light bulb on a tiny wooden vessel coming out of North Korea to fish. And there was a wonderful paper recently that just showed how the large Chinese tanker moving into North Korean waters and all the tiny little light bulbs skirting out into the Japanese waters because they wanted to get away from the... So you can start to see these dynamics, but you can only do it if you can afford the data. And now the data are becoming more affordable. These are the sort of data that can start to support developing nations to defend their livelihoods against international actors that are not respecting their sovereign territory or sovereign waters. And I think this has got to be at the forefront of our international discourse at the UN and elsewhere, because otherwise, how are we going to help those nations preserve their livelihoods? We know those coastal communities are literally dying for lack of food. So critical to, let's get on the cutting edge, the horizon of this technology, and let's make sure we can support developing nations with the livelihoods that they deserve. So, I'm going to wrap up now. I'd just like to talk a little bit about why it's been easy so far for us to get lots of great ocean data. And that's because we've had this unspoken post-World War II covenant. And that covenant has said nations themselves will invest in research and observation for themselves, essentially. But they make those data available, thereby bringing public good. And that's what we've depended on for the last 20 or 30 years. However, with the collapse of certain nations' commitment to ocean observation, it's really changed. Like the United States paid for half of the Argo program. More than half of global ocean observations were paid for by the United States of America. Now they will not be. So we need to scramble and find our way out of this problem. So increasingly under funding pressure, while expectations explode. Why do expectations explode? It's because we've had these data now for 30 years, and we know how powerful they are. We know how much information they can bring them, and we know how necessary they are to the world. So this is the paper I mentioned by Backer et al. 2023, where she showed as the absorption of carbon by the ocean is going up, the estimates of it are diverging. And then she's also showing the number of observations of ocean carbon have just plummeted. And that's at a critical time for the world. And on the right-hand side, there's a discussion by Abed Hassoun, one of my favorite colleagues at CIIMAR, talking about the ocean observing gaps and how do we get this, and how do we even implement any part of the UN Ocean Decade without the United States, right? We need to get a grip on that because we do not know what we're going to do. So we need a next generation covenant. And that means the people in this room, we have to redefine public good. What does it mean to deliver information to the public? How do we make sure that that can be maintained as nations pull back for whatever reason from their investment in those national observation systems? So we need to think about public engagement. We need to think about who around us can support what we do. We need to look at those public-private partnerships, and that's where I think CIIMAR has a huge role to play, because you do better than many, you do that interaction with industry. We need solutions that support the economy, that support climate solutions, but we must never get ourselves away from that environmental stewardship. And I think it's marrying those two, the environmental stewardship and the economic development, which is really where we need to be. And that is hard. I just want to say, I don't know how many times I've come under fire for even talking to an oil company. And yet, oil companies who are redefining themselves as energy companies want to give some of their profits to environmental causes. So we need to decide, how do we have that dialogue with our institutes, with our researchers, and with the public? We also need to understand the needs of stakeholders and what they call stakeholders and end users of our ocean data. And I don't think we do that because as scientists, we are fairly self-centered. We are driven by our next research grant. We are thinking about our own problems, and we have a set of very strong values. Most of us have a strong thread of conservation in our values. So any talk about talking to the oil industry, talking to mining interests, that becomes a big problem for us. And we need to have the courage to step into those conversations while maintaining our values, so that we can share them, not so that we can get rid of the values, but so that we can share them, and so we can bring understanding for some of these huge organizations. The international insurance industry is dying for dialogue with research, but they don't even know where to step in. Oil companies are no longer oil companies. They're just seeing themselves past peak oil, and they're going to become energy companies. And they're already diversifying. So there's a place where researchers need to step in and be your authentic self. Don't bow down to other people's values, but step in with courage into those conversations and talk to the difficult end users, the difficult stakeholders. Now, I wouldn't recommend you do that without the director of your institute having your back. But I think it's very important that we open our mind to that, because that's the future. We don't have the US anymore with the big bucks, driving all the infrastructure. So we're going to have to find a way to do it ourselves. And that's where we all should be collaborating. So those are my horizons. A lot of place where this discussion is happening is in the intergovernmental network, which was mentioned also by Alex. We have challenges here too. So if you look at those top 3 organizations, they all have, so the United Nations Climate Change, the Paris Agreement explicitly says we should be pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. The IMO, the International Maritime Organization, explicitly says you must not add any substance to the ocean unless, and that gives a set of rules. So those directives are to a certain extent directly conflicting each other, and we need to harmonize them. Convention on Biological Diversity, well, the BBNJ that Alex did such a good job describing, the BBNJ will be a huge influence, but it will conflict with the Paris Agreement, and we need to talk about how we're going to manage that. I am part of the WMO Greenhouse Gas Watch. They still think of ocean carbon as surface carbon, even though we know 90% of the ocean's carbon is in the deep sea. But they want a surface carbon number to interact with the atmosphere. Again, it's not a fight, but it's an iterative information movement. So we have to be in there. And so, of course, we also have finally the challenges in the economic framework of the world. We've got MCDR, marine carbon dioxide removal, with those challenges in the baseline. And then the voluntary carbon market, it's still voluntary. You don't have to buy carbon credits. Therefore, those carbon credits can stay in the repository until the end of time. And if no one buys them, they haven't helped, technically. Distorting subsidies for fisheries, that's another one of the big ones. And also that huge increase in global economic uncertainty driven by the rise of autocracies internationally. We have a lot of challenges, but we have a huge number of opportunities, and I'd love to see you all step up. I'd love to talk to you about them. How can we act internationally together to bring sort of clarity, data, and information into these important horizons? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anya, for that beautiful presentation with really lots of food for thought for the future. I would like just to ask the audience if you have any questions, please note them down, because we will have the opportunity to ask questions to our panelists at the very end. We will hold a panel session, a panel discussion, and we would like also to actually have questions and some discussion with the audience, okay? And with that, thank you so much, Anya. And we will move on now to our own in-house speaker, Vítor Vasconcelos. Well, for most of you, you already know him. Vítor has a PhD in biology at the Faculty of Science of the University of Porto, where he is a full professor. And is, of course, the director of our research center, as well as a member of the Scientific Council of the Portuguese Science and Technology Foundation for Natural and Environmental Sciences. He's also a member of the Scientific Council of the National Natural History Museum of France, and here at CIIMAR is the director of the Group on Blue Biotechnology and Health. His main research focuses on cyanobacteria, secondary metabolites and their uses, from toxins and molecules with biotechnological applications. He's also responsible for the LEJ culture collections with more than 2,000 strains of cyanobacteria and microalgae, and is also the director of the doctoral program in marine biotechnology and aquaculture at both University of Porto and University of Minho. And he is also a project evaluator of the Innovation Agency and various international research funding institutions. And he will now give us a glimpse into the future of CIIMAR.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anya, for this beautiful presentation. It's hard to follow you now after these challenges that you posed, but I'm taking also this opportunity to talk a bit about what we have achieved in these last 25 years, what we are now, and especially what we want for CIIMAR and for the oceans in the next 25 years. It was mentioned before that we evolved a lot since the beginning, because in the morning it was said that we started in this very old cabin in the center of Porto. We moved to another building close to the Faculty of Engineering. We are now in this building together, of course, with the other laboratories of different faculties, Polytechnical and IPMA. And now we are quite widespread, not just in the continental Portugal, but also in Madeira. So we have the Atlantic Ocean right in front of us, but also in front of most of the laboratories that we are formed for. As it was mentioned in the morning, we have three major thematic lines, global changes and ecosystem services, where we have most the biodiversity of researchers, from the physical oceanographers that study the tides, the currents, the coastal engineers that are quite important in terms of the coastal erosion, but also the energies coming from the ocean, chemists, biologists, people working on environmental toxicology as well, because we are very interested in the stressors, but also the research line of aquaculture and seafood quality. Portugal is the country in Europe that consumes more fish and shellfish. And as it was said by Benjamin this morning, more than 50% of the fish that we consume now comes from aquaculture, but a large majority is imported. So we need to have in-house ways of sustainable aquaculture production, and that's one of our missions, and it will be for the next years as well. And then marine biotechnology to unravel novel molecules, novel process and products to be able to take, especially from marine microorganisms. And we saw also in the morning the amazing chemical diversity that these organisms may contain in order to respond to economical, social, and ecological problems. For that, we have a series of scientific and technological platforms, Scientific Diving Center, because it's important not just for sampling, but for observation as well. We have also chemistry laboratories, analytical laboratories in this building. We have biodiscovery and omics. We have also aquaculture and animal experimentation facility in the basement of this building, literally under sea level, but where we have more than 1,000 square meter area for 20 laboratories to produce either fish or shellfish or algae, freshwater or marine. Ecotoxicology, especially to study the impact of contaminants in the environment and in different levels of the trophic chain, and the Blue Biobank, composed of several collections of microorganisms, but also of deep sea organisms, like Joanna mentioned before. And all these technological platforms are included in the framework of European infrastructures. And this is very important because it allows us not just to assess other infrastructures in other countries, but also to bring people from all over the world that can use our facilities for their own research. And we have projects that fund these secondments of people in both directions. Of course, that the results that we have for the last 25 years are very difficult to summarize, but we have a yearly report that is available online, so you can go to our site and download this report, where we have the major outputs of our research, not just in terms of the major projects, but also the papers and the patents that we have. And of course, apart from the science that we produce, we are also very keen on having other outputs of our research and innovation, namely the development of the first Blue Bioeconomy roadmap, the development of the Portuguese Blue Biobank with several collections, the CIIMAR Watch that I will speak about later, some of the companies that are startups of CIIMAR, but also the heavy impact that our outreach program have. More than 100,000 people per year are impacted by our outreach programs. And this is very important because we want also to conscientize the public of the importance of knowing and protecting the ocean. For instance, in more or less 1 week, we'll have an open day here in this building where more than 20,000 people in a single day visit us. And this is an opportunity for us to showcase the problems associated with the ocean. And then, as I mentioned before, we are increasing our facilities with some new constructions that will give better quality of life of our researchers and our personnel. And apart from that, we support a lot the public policies. We are members of several institutions, several international observatories, the European Marine Board as well, since almost the beginning. So, what we are now? We are mostly the people. I usually say that our best asset are the people, the researchers, because they are the ones that do the research that we have here. More than 600 people, more than 200 researchers, 30 nationalities, a lot of technicians and supporting offices and secretariat. And this is basically, we are an independent non-profit organization, so we do not depend on the university, so we have to depend on projects. And we have at this moment around 90 projects, because not all are contracted, about 30 million euros. And we are very competitive at European level, because at national level sometimes the fluctuation of funding is very wide, and so we have to now support ourselves, especially in international levels, not just in Europe, but also abroad. This is translated in more than 500 publications a year. We are very keen on protecting the intellectual property of the research we do, and this is something that we started about 10 years ago. We have around 30 patents that are active at the moment, which means that our research has this innovation character that allows us to be competitive in terms of contacting companies, contacting enterprises, and trying to valorize these patents, or via the creation of spin-offs like we had before. So this is something that really care about, and this is the examples that I can show you. We are also very important in terms of advanced training. Per year, we have about 20 PhD theses that are finished, about 100 master theses. So this is a heavy load of work, but at the same time, it gives us also manpower to continue to increase and especially give the opportunity to young researchers to work in a very competitive research center. We developed since 11 years ago a program of scholarships for bachelor, master, and PhD students that every year has calls, and this gives the opportunity also of young students since the bachelor degree to have direct contact with science, with research, and many of these students that already finished are nowadays with very good jobs, not all here, about 50% here, but most of them are out of CIIMAR. Support public policies I mentioned before, and then the CIIMAR outreach. So every year we have more than 1,000 outreach activities. And this is very important because we almost, I shouldn't say force, otherwise the students will call me back, but we invite every researcher to be part of these outreach activities, because it's different to present your work in a conference, in a very specific conference, and to present your work to a 10-year-old child that sometimes has never been in a laboratory, has never seen research by itself. So, taking this into account, what do we want for the next 25 years? We want to help people, when they look to the ocean like today, not seeing just this blue mass without understanding what's below. Because when you see this, you probably do not respect the ocean. You do not respect what is under this blue horizon. Not all of us has the opportunity to snorkel or dive in a tropical environment and see these beautiful corals and fish. And if you see this, you certainly will not pollute that site. You certainly will have more care about that site. So that's what we want that our citizens will do. Also, what we want is to show them that below this blue surface, this blue horizon, there is life, as they respect when they go to a botanical garden or to a tropical environment. But sometimes it's also important to show them that the ocean can be like this. The ocean sometimes is completely destroyed. I saw this 2 years ago well, close to Bill's home in Mexico, in the Baja California, and we will be diving with hundreds of meters of coral dead. But if you are just looking to the blue surface, you don't see this. So we want to call the attention of the public in general, but also the politicians, that nowadays, in many parts of the world, the ocean is like this, and we need to reverse this. We need to create measures to reverse this fact. And most of the people believe that the ocean is vast, is very wide, as you know, a massive amount of water can dilute any type of contaminant. But in fact, the amount of water that we have in the ocean is very scarce. This big sphere, blue sphere, is the total amount of water that we have in the planet, but most of it is frozen in the poles. The water that we have available as liquid is the second small ball. And the tiny one that probably those that are in the back do not see is the fresh water available. So it's a very scarce, resource that we have to protect. So for the next years, we want to continue in this, way of helping to protect the ocean by knowing what we have in the ocean. And as Anya said, it's very important, the observation. It's very important to have data. It's very important to have baseline data for us to help the managers, the politicians, to manage and better manage the ocean. But we also need to promote sustainable aquaculture. We have to promote sustainable biotechnology in order to explore the ocean without destroying it. We developed, as I mentioned before, the Blue Bioeconomy Roadmap for Portugal, where we pointed out some of these aspects. How can we develop a program for exploiting the ocean in a sustainable way? We develop a series of actions, and this is also available in our site, so I'm not going to mention in detail. But our alignment has to be strategic. Our program has to be strategically aligned with some instruments, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, of course, but also the Horizon Europe program, in special the Starfish mission, but also national, regional, and the MAR 2030, which are instruments that allow us to respond to the problems that are posed by the society. And the mission Starfish is very important, is guiding some of our future developments. Many of them coincide with those that Anya just mentioned before. The zero pollution, regenerating marine ecosystems, decarbonizing the ocean, revamping governance. And I will mention just a few of them. And of course, one that is in our top list is the fact that we need that each European has the conscience of being a citizen of our ocean and waters. Usually we are just citizens of land, but we need to be citizens also of the ocean, because in that sense we can protect much better the ocean. And for that we do in-house, with schools, with the monitoring interpretation centers here in Matosinhos and Vila do Conde, a very extensive program in order to give awareness to these people that, in fact, we need to understand the ocean. It's very important to have a cleanup of a beach to get rid of plastics, but it's also very important to make aware of these people that we should not use so much plastic, because otherwise we are cleaning the beach every year and the problem is not solved. Then the question of observation. It's very important, the observation, and also making the data available. And this is something that we are developing here. It's not very easy, for instance, in Portugal, to have projects that fund observation, that fund monitorization. And we started here at CIIMAR a program that is the CIIMAR Watch, where we selected several points here in the north coast of Portugal to have a continuously monitoring program of several parameters: physical, chemical, biological, contamination. And we go from the whale to the bacteria, or vice versa. So we have a wide range of contamination sites. And this is very important because we need baseline data. We need this data that can also be extended to some other parts of Portugal. We are starting also, hopefully this year, another project, Atlântida 2, which is the North Atlantic Coastal Observatory of Portugal. And we are not doing this alone. We are doing this together with other institutions, the University of Minho, University of Trás-os-Montes, and also the University of Porto, in order to develop a series of activities that will help us to have the baselines for many environmental parameters, but also develop data that can be used for support of the decisions that the entities need to have. Of course, we are a research center that has no ships. Although we have many ships here, and sometimes we use them for observation of whales, and we do a lot of work together with some companies, but we rely also on the international collaborations, and it's great to have extended international collaborations in order to help us to go from the Arctic to the Antarctic, and this is something that we are working hard. And of course, all this data needs to be made available to the general public, to the stakeholders, and we are working with Fórum Oceano, Inesctec, and other institutions here in the North region in this project, Portugal Blue Digital Hub, where we will make available to any stakeholder, any entity that is interested in this data in order to get one single balcony where they can access this data. And we have been involved at European level in many projects regarding the digital twin ocean, because of course this is something that we need to make available in terms of data that are generated by public support. The habitats are degraded in many locations, so we are working hard and will continue working hard in solutions to revert this state of degradation and contamination. We had several programs regarding artificial reefs right here in the port of Leixões, or using floating islands with plants adapted to salt water that can be used to bioremediate contaminated sites, or using bioremediation strategies using bacteria that can degrade, for instance, oils or other organic contaminants in order to, using natural-based solutions, clean the environments and restore the biodiversity of these environments. Another measure regarding aquaculture and trying to establish zero-carbon aquaculture. We have a series of projects. In this morning, Benjamin spoke about feeds, not just functional feeds, but also feeds that prevent the health of fish. We want to, and we are including novel ingredients, especially insects or algae, that can provide better sanitary state without compromising the nutritional value of the fish and of the shellfish. And this area of aquaculture is very important because Portugal needs to increase and has the conditions to increase sustainable aquaculture, both inshore and offshore. And the blue biotechnology pipelines. We have been working in establishing in Portugal the Blue Biobank, the Portuguese Blue Biobank, together with many of the institutions that are here today, from CIIMAR to the University of Aveiro, IPMA, and some collabs as well. And these Blue Biobanks are the warranty that the applications of blue biotechnology can be made in a sustainable way. We don't need anymore to go to the environment to collect organisms because we have the biobanks, and we can grow them in controlled ways in order to optimize the production of novel products, processes, and services. And we are leading some projects in this area, from the genomics of the organisms, using also gene mining to unravel novel enzymes and molecules that can be used to unravel novel products, to the bioassay or chemistry-guided isolation of novel compounds combined with chemical synthesis that can provide better molecules without so much toxicological impacts, but with a better activity. And of course, we have to do this in an international framework. And we have the ocean. Usually I say that the Atlantic Ocean does not divide us, but make us close. So we have to work more closely with Canada, with the States, We have to work more close with Portuguese-speaking countries because they are very important. Brazil is a huge country. They have huge resources, and we need to stress these connections. And so we have this beautiful ecosystem here that can be effectively capitalized because, as it was mentioned before by some of the other colleagues, working alone is not enough. We need to work together, and our institutes can, in fact, maximize the potential of research, and especially if we are together, we can also make our voice become louder. And so I will invite Anya for the next time I will have meetings with ministers, so you are a very, strong person. And so I will end up as I started. Outreach is very important. Ocean literacy, I think, is still in the beginning, so we need to continue to educate the new generations, but also their parents, their grandparents, in order to better understand and know the ocean, in order to better respect it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vitor. Thank you very much, Vitor, for this nice overview of the path that CIIMAR has trailed and what's lying ahead for us. Last but not least, I will call now onto stage Fiona Grant. Fiona is the national contact point for Horizon Europe Cluster 6 and the mission to restore our ocean and waters by 2030. She has a background in marine geology and geophysics, and she is based in the Marine Institute in Ireland, where she has previously had responsibility for European marine research infrastructures and now international programs. The International Progress Manager acts as a key point of contact for Ireland in its relationships with international research organizations, and Fiona's role is to support the development of a vibrant marine research community in Ireland by encouraging participation in European Union and other international research funding programs. She has held the position of Chair of the European Marine Board since spring 2024 and oversees Ireland's engagement in the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development 2021-2030. Welcome, welcome Fiona, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think Victor said he felt very unlucky speaking after Anya. Well, honestly, I feel the unluckiest of everybody being the last presentation of the day. So look, I just really want to thank CIIMAR, to Victor and Joanna for the invitation here today. It really is such a privilege. And people this morning talked about being proud of being, a graduate of CIIMAR, and you so should be. Anya said what a beautiful location it is. It feels like a perfect example of being situated in the heart of the blue economy with the container ships and the fishing vessels and the seagulls. Makes it all very authentic. So thank you so much for the warm welcome and the generosity of your hosting. Today, however, is a celebration. So we say in Ireland, Lá Brenna Honna Gwith. So a very happy birthday to you. Just that's so much, as much as the chair of the European Marine Board, but also from the Marine Institute in Ireland. We have a really long collaboration with Portugal. We have a lot of friends here, and I think we very much look on Portugal with some envy, the way you have such strong connections with government, with your attachment to the ocean. I think we don't necessarily have the same at home, so you're very much an exemplar of that. And you've shown with all your Horizon Europe participation, with your coordinations, 25 years, it's not a given. It comes from a combination of vision and passion, hard work, scientific excellence. So really congratulations. It's due to you all. You really, deserve it. But really I'm here to talk about the European Marine Board and what we do, which CIIMAR is a really valued member, and Joanna is a wonderful delegate for you. I know that Miguel Semedo has been in the Deep Sea and Ocean Health Working Group, and your tremendous scientific leader, Isabel Sousa Pinto, was in the Coastal Resilience Group. And we'll talk a little bit about those in the presentation as well. But we're working at the Marine Science Policy Interface to provide advice on future science policy needs related to marine issues. We are an independent and self-sustaining body, and we cover a really wide range of marine science topics. We were established in 1995, but we like to say that we have a European focus, an international outlook, but with national connections. So that's really important to us. So we're this unique partnership of marine oceanographic institutes, research funding agencies and universities. But overall, we are representing over 10,000 researchers and technical staff. Our secretariat is based in Ostend. We're very fortunate to have the support there from the Institute. And our mission statement is that we provide a pan-European platform for member organisations to develop common priorities, advance marine research and bridge the gap between science and policy. So how do we do that? We do this mostly through our events and publications. Our Eurasian conferences tend to be organised in conjunction with the European Commission and often coincide also with presidency events. We have our forums, which are single-day events, which focus on really bring the scientific community and policymakers together. We have a number of brown bag lunches. Our publications really are the key, what we do, and we have science webinars that are held 1 hour every third Thursday of the month. So these are our recent publications. One of our most recent ones was on the deep sea, and it was lovely actually to have Alex here today. He was chair of a previous working group delving deeper, I think back in 2015. So, you know, really was a case of updating much of the work that you've done. Much progress has been made, a huge amount still to do. What I would say, each of these publications is available online, and we have policy briefs as well. If you want anything in hard copy, we're always very happy to send it out to you. But these are the ones kind of really since 2021. We are also really active in EU funded projects and tenders, and that's important to us. Again, it's a key mechanism for which we get some of the advice from our publications, again back to policymakers. We have our plenary meetings, which happen twice a year. They used to be both in person, now one online, one in person. We're very much looking forward to SOPOT next month. Anya talked a lot about marine carbon dioxide renewal. That's our next publication upcoming, and we've 2 more just about to kick off. But our flagship publication over the last number of years has been this Navigating the Future 6, which is our foresight publication. And it was slightly different exercise to one that we'd conducted previously. We really wanted to place it within this wider Earth system. So for the first time, we actually included a section on people, and we included a section on water, so fresh water in particular, kind of to reflect the mission ocean, but also climate and biodiversity feature within that. So like I said, here we've a wonderful example of the blue economy and some of the recommendations from this. I don't want to read it out, and I promised Joanna that I would keep to my 15 minutes, but we have a number of recommendations, you know, integrating inter and transdisciplinary ways of working, understanding how humans interact with the ocean, and meeting multiple marine societal goals, but also looking at this transparent, just, equitable and sustainable approaches to governance. The ocean and climate, again, we've talked a lot about the importance of climate, and this is our Building Coastal Resilience in Europe policy brief. So again, some of the recommendations coming from that group were to understand the processes and the changes in the Greenland and the Antarctic ice sheets, mapping natural CO2 and methane reservoirs, enabling long-term monitoring of ECVs and EOVs, and research and regulation to support ocean-based climate solutions. Ocean and freshwater, as I said, very much looking at how humans impact freshwater fluxes and pollution, obviously. So developing monitoring approaches to the impacts of saltwater intrusion, exploring intermediate reuse of pollutants in circular economy approaches, and exploring poorly understood pathways for pollutants and pathogens. And again, oceans and biodiversity. So again, trying to get a better understanding of the ability of marine species to adapt to climate change, pathogenic microorganisms, integrate traditional taxonomic and new genomic methods. Alex talked about that this morning, you know, what is it, 13 years to describe a species. It's not a trivial thing. And conducting training to ensure taxonomic expertise is not lost. Then the final chapter very much looked at cross-cutting main messages. So obviously ocean finance is key to what we're trying to do, balancing the need for monitored parameters against resources and technologies, and also, you know, really encouraging our politicians to listen and engage in these science policy interfaces. Just the image at the below was from the last Eurocian conference. We brought together a lot of the European networks for our Vigo statement, the Vigo declaration, again really calling on a united voice for marine science in Europe. So this is one of our most recent products, like I said. This was an update to the previous working group. It outlines the current policy and research funding status and recommendations, both for research, for funding agencies and for policymakers. Our carbon dioxide renewal will be published late this year. It is slightly different. We have recommendations for funders, for policymakers, but also to researchers themselves, so that if you are undertaking research, what is the best way to go about approaching it? What do you need to consider? It's a hugely complex area, as Anya said, and we need to know that we're doing it right and that we can have some impact with that. Our biomolecular approaches was just agreed at the last plenary, so we've just appointed our chair, who is Louise Alcock of the University of Galway. So this is going to look at biomolecular approaches, very, I think, of interest to CIIMAR, and we'll be putting out, I think actually they have had the call for experts already, so yeah, I'll let, Joanna will give the update in due course. The Marine Board is also what's called an implementing partner of the Ocean Decade. So we're very active in relation to the Ocean Decade and the mission to restore ocean and waters. We get a lot of our events endorsed. We discuss the Ocean Decade, the outcomes and the challenges in our webinars and presentations. And generally we track EMB member activities for the decade. Like I said, the mission is obviously a really important driver for us as well, for engagement with the European Commission. We support a lot of events for them related to the mission. So what might be of interest to some of our early career researchers, we have a Young Ambassador program, and we have a couple of alumni here, I believe. But it's very much, there is a modest stipend to support their engagement with the European Marine Board. We've had very positive feedback. We have a small alumni network. There is a call for ambassadors every year, and we offer a mentorship program to them also. This leads into the EMB ECOP network, and I talked to Gary Kett there at lunch about lots of other, the Marine network. We're really trying to make sure that we're not duplicating some of the activities. So I know there's going to be an intergenerational workshop coming up under the auspices of the All-Atlantic Ocean Research and Innovation Alliance next year in Galway. So yeah, we're looking forward to keeping you all briefed on that. So just how to connect with us. It's all on our website. You can follow us on social media. If you do want any hard copies, we're very happy to issue those to you. And just to say thank you so much and congratulations again from the bottom of our hearts from both the EMB and from Ireland. I'm just really thrilled to have been invited, and best of luck for the next 25 years.
Thank you so much, Fiona, and thank you for the lovely work that the EMB has been doing to really bring science into this policy sphere. This has been, also for myself as a delegate, has been a great experience, and I think we all, and CIIMAR, also with our colleagues from CIIMAR, we really benefit a lot from this interaction with the EMB. Now I would actually like to call all of our speakers back onto the stage, and we will have a small discussion, and would be more than happy actually now to take some questions from the audience. We are running a little bit late, and because we also have a few closing speeches that need to be a little bit on time, we will have to be a little bit briefer than we would normally be. I don't know if there are any questions first from the audience for any of our speakers. This has been a wonderful session with lots of food for thought for the future. Any questions? Yes, Isabel.
I would like to place this question to Anya, but maybe to all three speakers, because my experience has been in my field, more environment and biodiversity, that the sea has been a very small part of it, but is now getting a bit stronger. So there is more awareness that the marine part of biodiversity, marine part of the environment, also for the climate and everything, is really important. I would like to know if you also feel that, and also ideas how to continue to improve this participation of also researchers, but also the awareness to the public and to the politicians and also businesses about the sea and about the importance of the sea, the environment and so on. Of course, also for the economy, but I was now focusing more on the environment and biodiversity and climate.
So I would say that the same work, it's just hard work, continuing and not letting it drop. At the UN level, it took a decade to move the ocean into the understanding of the climate, the climate agencies at the UN, and now the Convention on Biological Diversity, and I think BBNJ is a huge opportunity because the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction essentially opens people's eyes to exactly the problem that you have highlighted. But you can borrow our slide if you like. We have a big slogan that says, "The ocean is missing," with a picture of the earth with dry, cracked seabed instead of the ocean. And I think it means going into the organizations where the ocean hasn't been present and kind of almost force-feeding the data, but also listening to why. And in most cases, it's just because we're land animals and we don't naturally think about the ocean. The ocean is not in our backyard. It's not where we don't swim in it every day. Well, some of us try to, but we don't always actually. So I think the relentless work that you and others have done, and just remembering that we have to continue to do it. Happy to share some of those slogan slides, and getting into some of the discussions at COPs, I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think we still have to work a lot, and our job is also to inform politicians about the importance of the ocean at the regional, national, international level. We must say that at the European level, we have a European Space Agency. We don't have an European Marine Agency. So we spend much more money, looking up to the stars, which might be very important and very interesting, but we don't spend that much money in ocean research. In Portugal, even this morning I was speaking with the president of the Portuguese FCT, the Portuguese Science Foundation, and spend a lot of money paying a quote to be member of the European Space Agency. But we don't have a program for the ocean in Portugal for the FCT. So I think we still have a lot of steps to do, but it's our job to do it. And I think we are on the way, but the work is not done yet.
Yeah, I would like to say, yes, it's on the agenda, but I think we can't be complacent about it. With the Ocean Pact, we still don't necessarily know what that's going to mean, and there is, reference to research and innovation strategy. I think, through our engagement both at agency level and through things like the Marine Board and Euromarine, it's just really important that we engage with that process to make sure that it's fit for purpose and that we keep investments in this space. So, yeah, we've done a lot, but yeah, keep our eye on the prize.
We need to keep working, keep staying on it, right? I don't know if there are other questions from the audience. Yes.
Yeah, first, thank you very much. And my question goes to Anja. I hope it's not an icky question. I'm a bit nervous about asking, but since you mentioned that you have been judged by people talking about maybe considering certain industries for funding, I was wondering, because there's a certain stigma about certain industries greenwashing and questioning the outcome of research that is funded by certain industries. So how would you say should one approach this because funding is so important, right? Everybody's talking about it. So what do you guys think is the best approach for that?
I think the most important thing is to be absolutely directly honest and never greenwash. In fact, go the other way and say, why are you supporting this, Mr. Oil CEO? Why are you supporting this? What do you see you could gain from it? When I was doing research up in Alaska, and there was the Exxon Valdez oil spill, I date myself with that, but there was a T-shirt that came out that said, the whole Exxon Valdez oil spill long before your time, but basically the guy was supposed to have been impaired, a drunk driver captain who ran the ship aground, and there was an oil spill. And there's a T-shirt that went around Alaska that said, his driving didn't cause the oil spill, yours did. And I think it's that coming to Muhammad moment where we're basically thinking, who is driving the oil industry? Ultimately, it's the public. It doesn't mean that they're not doing unethical things like the Global Climate Coalition. It doesn't mean that there's all sorts of bad actors that are doing things that we disagree with ethically. But ultimately, if there's no demand for oil, oil will not be produced. So I think it's about recognizing that, saying, well, until we get to peak oil, we still need how most people have driven a car over the last week, right? And we're doing that. Many have. Okay, I'm not going to rant. But do you see what I mean? Like calling it as it is. The more truth you speak, the more you're heard. But also listen a little bit to their truth, because in many cases they're dealing with a difficult situation of trying to pivot in a complex world. And sometimes you can be a lifeline to them. You can say, I will give you the truth. I will give you the research understanding as we know it, but you have to allow me to speak the truth. And not all of them are up for that. So find your allies that look you in the eye and are willing to have the real conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That is a great point. And actually that's something that really captivated me on your presentation was this speak up. And I think I don't know, I mean in Canada or in Ireland, but I have the feeling that in Portugal we are quite muted as scientists sometimes, that we don't, we try to reach out to policymakers certainly, but we're still not as vocal, and especially society is not as vocal as we see, for instance, in other countries regarding environmental and ocean issues. And this is something that somehow we should turn it around, because people are very busy, of course, with their own lives, and sometimes they just don't have also the tools or the knowledge to actually be, you know, empowered to have an active voice also for ocean and for environmental issues. And I think also us research institutes have also a little bit this role to empower that voice, you know, give that voice to the people on these issues. I don't know if there are other questions from the audience. If not, I have also here a few questions for all of our speakers. I think first to you, Anya, once again, I think you described these balancing acts really well, this between ethical and environmental action, as well as human benefit. Can you share an example where you found that this balance is particularly difficult to achieve ocean research, and how can we solve this?
Of course, I believe research is the answer, right, to all of these questions, because the more data and understanding you have, the more you can tread that line both ethically and correctly. There's too many examples, but the one I talked about today of marine carbon dioxide removal, I think that's a really important one, because as we go forward, we are going to be asked to do more and more to the ocean and with the ocean to serve our climate goals, and we have to be equipped with the environmental knowledge and understanding and data to walk that walk. It's not going to be any time where you think you have the right path. It's not going to be that path. So it's almost like a dynamic positioning of your ethical path. Just to sort of say, because I didn't understand until I went to a Gordon conference on carbon dioxide removal, I didn't understand the baseline issue. Something was not right, not sitting right with me, but then I went to this conference about the land baselines, and I realized what the land scientists had been kind of going on their direct track and got it completely wrong in terms of what the public and industry wanted. And so it's a little bit about being open, I'll just call it dynamic positioning of your, so that you're listening all the time and hearing different views, and then taking the next step with all the knowledge that you can get.
That's a very good point. And also, how do we bring these? Some of these issues are quite complex, even for researchers. And how do we sort of break it down in manageable, let's say, chunks? And how can we actually bring this to society to actually grasp some of these issues, to actually have a stand regarding those? That's a very good point. Now I would say I would now move on to Vitor. Of course, marine biotechnology is one of the big future horizons. It has played an very important role here at CIIMAR, certainly. And this is definitely a research frontier and also a very strong potential economical driver for Portugal. And you touched upon an issue that I think it's very interesting, is how do you manage these risks of exploitation while ensuring the sustainability of the ocean? Where do we draw this line? How do we balance that act?
Yeah, I think nowadays we have better tools to do that, because first of all, we have advanced genomics that we didn't have 10, 20 years ago. So nowadays, and we have work done with the eDNA that sometimes can help us to unravel novel biodiversity that we cannot see when we are doing regular sampling. And with this eDNA, we can sequence the genomes, we can unravel novel molecules that we can do without having to harvest the organisms, without having to assess the deep ocean, for instance. So the genomics made very strong advances in order to make biotechnology technology more accessible, but at the same time more sustainable. And then something that we are dealing for the last years is the use of biobanks, because biobanks are very important, not just in terms of biotechnology, which is, of course, my main interest as a researcher, but they are also very important as restoration strategies, because when we are using biobanks with live organisms, and not just microbes, we can use live biobanks of macroalgae or sponges or corals, and whenever there is an accident, an oil spill, we can restore the environments using the material coming from these biobanks. So biobanks are amazing instruments for biotechnology, but they can use also for conservation. And this is something that is not very clear in many minds, even of scientists. So I believe that blue biotechnology can be sustainable if done in this way, contrary to the biotechnology that was plant-based, where sometimes huge amount of endangered plants were harvested to extract tiny molecules, so we can do that in this way. The main challenge is probably the difficulty to go from the research to the market. It takes much longer compared to an IT research, for instance, or the other research, even aquaculture. So it's very important that we make available these biobanks to all over the world in order to express better the possibility of getting new products, processes, and services in an international way.
Thank you. That's a great point. Now I would actually like to ask Fiona, because the European Marine Board has really had such an important role at the European level with bringing this science to policy making, largely at the European level, but also at national level. This has had a very important role. Now, as chair actually of the European Marine Board, where do you see that there are the largest gaps today between the knowledge that we scientists are producing and the actions actually that the policymakers
need to take.
Yeah.
Well, I think it probably comes back to Isabel's question again, because I think sometimes policymakers want a really easy answer and they want you to already know the answer. So they don't want to hear that you need more investment in order to be able to give them the advice. But it's complicated, you know. So the implementation of the BBNJ agreement, we wouldn't be able to do that tomorrow without further study and investment, you know, same with MCDR. So I think we've just really got to make the case for how we need to do it properly. But I guess we need to be really aware it's happening in a very complicated geopolitical context. You know, a lot of funding is potentially going to go towards dual use research. Some of that may be okay for the marine and maritime sector, some of it may not, you know, so it's just to really not forget how important our marine and ocean science is and just really keep banging that drum. And I know that we'll be doing that for the Marine Board, and I know we'll need our friends on all sides of the Atlantic to do that with us. So yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer to it, but just always make sure that the advice we're giving is independent and is based on best science available, whilst looking to the future and what technologies can we do. How can the digital twins help us? So just really just ploughing on.
Thank you. And in cognizance of time, and I see that our guests for the closing addresses have arrived, I would just have one quick question to the entire panel, because in many of our institutions we also have great responsibilities with advanced training. And my question to you is, what kind of training or skills should we be giving this next generation of ocean and environmental researchers to ensure that they can handle these emerging challenges? So what are the key training skills that we should be empowering this new generation for this new horizon that we want to build?
I'll go quickly because actually the Marine Institute, we don't train ourselves, but what I would say is just to retain that independent thinking. You know, I've been reading a lot around the use of AI at undergraduate and even actually primary school and secondary school level, just to kids learn to think independently and to really critique what they're doing. So that's from a almost like a layperson perspective. Yeah.
That's a great
well,
point.
I think the ocean is so vast and the areas are so diverse that each of our own institutions is not able to cope with all the aspects. So I think it's very important to have national and international networks of doctoral schools in order to cover all the aspects of the ocean, and sometimes also give some transversal ways of thinking about the ocean, because sometimes a microbiologist only thinks about microbiology, but if he has also some ways of understanding what's around microbiology, they might be probably more open to this networking and collaborations that will make science advance faster.
These multidisciplinary
Yeah.
dialogues, it's
Yeah.
increasingly important
Yeah.
that we train our researchers in these interdisciplinary area fields of research. And
Yeah, I would just echo that. So just thank you also to all the students and postdocs in the audience who've given me great discussions today at the coffee breaks and the lunch break. Loved talking to you, and I also noticed that many of you are multidisciplinary already. So it's having the courage to step out of your own discipline is critically important, because you need to be able to have those conversations with all your colleagues, the physicists, the biologists, the chemists, everybody, and that will also help you with the public. It'll help you with your boss. It'll help you with your own students eventually, and also with the public. So I think it's very, very that multidisciplinarity is the next big challenge. So keep that in your mind, and please try to, even though you need to have your special disciplinary skills, know that there are a vast array of skills beyond that that you need to be tapping into to do anything successfully in this new world.
Yeah. So join those seminars that we have every Wednesday, even if they're not on your field of expertise.
That's a good. Okay.
And with this, I would like to ask again for a round of applause to our panel members, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.